Welcome back to another episode of Azrael Reacts. I'm your boy Azrael, and like I said in my last video that I've done, I got a series coming with this one, man, because this is crazy. Crazy work for real. Crazy work for real. Like, I'm just gonna stop talking. Let's just go ahead and hop straight into the video. Let's just hop right into this.
But the word black is a social construct associated to us, like the word white is a. So when you talk about being indigenous to the land, can you expound on that? Being indigenous and Aboriginal is pretty much saying that we were here before any European colonialism. I'm a Moor. So the Moroccan Empire expanded from Northeast Africa, even across the Great Atlantis. We got to know that we Aboriginal to this land. Like, we didn't come over here on boats and slave ships and stuff. Yeah, that puts you in a different mindset that you need to go somewhere else.
Yeah, like you don't belong here.
Yeah, my family's birth records, and I was coming to, like, I'm having conversations with my grandma. Cherokee. That's our tribe. Cherokee.
Cherokee too. That was my tribe too.
But it's a misnomer though. It's misnomers.
Wow.
Because that's not actually how you pronounce it. It's more like it's Aboriginal language. So that's how they, like Choctaw. That means chocolate people. That's something that they invented.
The Indian means indigo,
like
because when they came over here, we was like bluish. We was so dark.
Dark that they blue.
We had pigment. We had blue pigment. So some of these conscious people that's even trying to give you messages, you notice they paint their skin
and the blue cover art.
Talk about Avatar.
Actually, like the original people that was of the land, and then they, try to coerce them. They try to trick them, make them think that they were actually there to work with them, and then they stole everything.
Fake ass Thanksgiving story.
Yeah, and the moment they disagreed, they went straight to war.
Black Indians mean Afro-Indigenous people, genius. Bro, you're making no sense. The last video I showed you that there were Black Indians on Google. You said there was no Black Indians on Google, and I showed you that they were. Now you're trying to say that there's a name change. Black Indians mean Afro-Indigenous. So do you want me to type in Afro-Indigenous and see who pops up from there? Afro-Indigenous. Black Indian or Afro-Indigenous, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be. And it's on Google, but we're not on Google. It's like, bro, you need to go study some more. You shouldn't even. This is the last comment I'm replying to. Go study some more. Stop tagging me and shit. You're done.
Okay, I'm going to rest my case. All Black people are indigenous. Either you are of the indigenous American Indios, who were claimed with the Doctrine of Discovery in 1493, or you are of the indigenous North Africans, who are the ancient Berbers. But one thing you aren't is Black. So I personally don't feel like arguing with y'all on the internet anymore, so I'm definitely doing a rebrand. And I'll see you guys soon. Do your research. Go hug a tree. Welcome home.
Did y'all know artists used to portray America like this, and that the emblem used to look like this? Let's talk about the Amaru Khan, how the Anglos and Saxons deceived the nation. Looking at early maps from settlers, we can see how the Spanish, the British, the Dutch, and the French all portrayed the original inhabitants, aka Amerindians. We see how they're depicted in fine art, in trinkets, even in sculptures. But the question is, who were the last of the Mohicans? Could it be the Creek, the Muskogeans, how many of these tribes were dissolved into the melting pot we call the black race? It's not as rare as you think to find Blackfoot of yesterday resembling Blackfoot of today. There seems to be this misconception that honoring your American Indian roots requires the validation of a Darth role, but you don't even have to have Indian blood to be on that list. Let's take this article from 100 years ago, which is really interesting. Y'all let me know if y'all want a part 2. But it clearly states that to this day, many families on the so-called Creek tribal rolls have no Indian blood. And that's what got me to thinking.
There was a knock at the door in Haskell, Oklahoma. Shinda called out the 92-year-old man. One of the men on the porch replied, "Umbuya Sachia." The preacher opened the door and welcomed his two friends into his house. By the Creek language, the three men are Black Indians, a mixed Indian and Black blood. There are pockets of them scattered throughout the United States. In Delaware, they are known as the Forgotten Moors. In Louisiana and North Carolina, the Red Book. The settlers offered slaves to the so-called Indians for their land in Alabama and Georgia, and the so-called Creek Indians took them with them when they moved to Indian Territory, now known as Oklahoma. See, the so-called Negroes were more helpers than slaves to the Creek, who were allegedly nomads and knew nothing about farming, and it was the blacks who taught them, which is where the story starts to get confusing. If the so-called Creeks were nomads, why were they paid in slaves to leave their so-called land? Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, we know who was there, and we know these people were excellent farmers. It seems more like they picked up some nomads and gathered them to one place, maybe told them that they would give them some land, if they called themselves. But y'all let me know if y'all want me to get back into that article.
Can y'all help me figure this out? Because I'm struggling. So I was looking at populations of the world in the 1500s. Now Europe was around 61 million, about the same as Africa. Each of those about 25% of that of Asia. And scholars estimate the population of the Americas to be around 100 million. And even though 500,000 Europeans migrated into the region during that century, primarily from the Iberian Peninsula. Wait, can we stop for a second? Y'all know the Moors conquered and ruled a significant portion of the Iberian Peninsula from 711 to 1492 AD, right? And then they exiled about 275,000 of them, which says it's 4% of the total population. So that brings the peninsula's population to about 6.8 million. Well, that's the entire population of the peninsula. And despite all them people leaving, Europe's population increased by about 20%, and Africa's by 40%. And somehow the population of the Americas was reduced to 6 million. So they expect me to believe that millions of people started migrating out of these regions into these regions, and that all of these regions seen a significant increase in population, while these regions seen a decrease of 94%. Have you all ever seen the Great Lakes? Okay, they gone. Alright, let's get into it. We've been talking about how many pre-Columbian cultures were collectively termed the mound builders. These indigenous peoples erected earthwork mounds for an extended period of more than 5,000 years, spanning a period roughly 3500 BC. I mean, we talking from the Great Lakes to the Ohio River Valley to Florida, which was much bigger than we know it today. From the Mississippi River Valley and all its tributary waters. Do y'all know how big that is? I mean, we even going into the Carolinas. But look how much landmass this covers. Look at all these structures. Look at all these tribes. Would you believe me if I said their descendants still inhabit these regions today? Well, they do. Irony is, a lot of them aren't even aware. Here's a map of the most densely populated areas of so-called Black Americans. And before y'all say, those were probably small villages, that couldn't be further from the truth. Let's take Cahokia, for example, which is located near present-day St. Louis, had an estimated population of 20,000, which may not seem like a major city today, but 20,000 in 1500, well, that was bigger than almost every city in Europe, including London. Looking at populations of the Americas in 1500s, some estimates suggest as high as 112 million. Now, where do y'all think all them people went? And why would they need to recruit so many workers if there were so many people here already? Maybe they were recruiting warriors. I was just wondering.
I've been trying to tell y'all. I've been trying to show y'all. Sometimes you gotta let people tell them they self. So I'ma shut up.
Listen to what he says that we already knew were indigenous, but listen to what he says.
All y'all in here that are commenting, I screenshot. I have a secondary person there in the other room. They screenshot all your accounts. We put you on a watch list because you're waking up. You're starting to realize that you're the original Americans, and we can't be having that. That's why we put a lot of y'all leaders in jail and stuff for SEXUAL, ABUSCE of MINORS. Catch them. You know, we plant fake evidence on them. You know, a lot of y'all leaders that first started out in the 2019s and 2020s and 21s are now sitting in federal and state penitentiary.
Now, why would he say that? Shout out my man Gaddy and Earth Speaks. Y'all tap in with the fellas if y'all like that real.
Someone asked me, what happened to the Mayans, the Mesoamerican civilization that began around 2000 BC? Pioneers of agriculture, writing, mathematics, and architecture. Who's responsible for these ancient murals? And who are these melanated beings depicted as gods and king-like figures? And who are those in bondage? And were these Ajah truly capable of mediating between mortals and the supernatural? And were they the ancestors, the predecessors, or an extension of the Mississippian culture? An ancient civilization of indigenous Americans whose cities were laid out almost identical to those in Mesoamerica flourished at the same time. Were these separate cultures that coexisted and cohabitated, or did a separation occur? Who built Cahokia, one of America's first cities, home of the largest prehistoric mound in the Americas? Located in present-day Illinois with satellite cities like St. Louis, East St. Louis, Mitchell, DuPont, and Lebanon. Larger than London when European settlers arrived, well known for its complex societies. Forefathers to families like the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, Muskogee, Caddo, Natchez, Tunica, Osage, Quapaw, Alabama, Alapache, and others. And thus, perhaps the true story of the Mayan civilization is living before our very eyes. Any other questions?
They told us we came here in chains, that we were stolen from Africa with no identity, no land, no history. But what if I told you, this was all a lie? Before 1492, the Moors were already in the Americas. Long before Columbus, we sailed these waters, established trade routes, and built civilizations. The Olmecs, Washita, Yamasee, and many other indigenous tribes, these were our ancestors. Mansa Musa's empire, the Mali Moors, and even the ancient Carthaginians crossed the Atlantic. They didn't come as slaves, they came as kings, scholars, and traders. The proof is in the artifacts, the symbols, the pyramids, and the linguistic connections between African and indigenous languages. But then came 1492. The Moors were expelled from Spain, and the Spanish turned their conquest to the west. Their goal? To erase all memory of our presence, to enslave and conquer, to turn kings into servants. They raped indigenous women, stole land, and forced Spanish surnames upon us. They erased our Moorish names, our Islamic and indigenous traditions, and rebranded us under new labels, Negro, Indian, slave. This was the greatest identity theft in history. And the worst part? Many of us still believe the lies. They didn't just erase our past, they built a system to keep us from reclaiming it. Today, we pay rent on stolen land. We work jobs that barely pay us enough to survive. We use a fiat currency controlled by a system that was never designed for us. And when you try to wake up, they call you crazy. They censor your words. They tell you that sovereignty is dangerous. But let me ask you this, if reclaiming your nationality was meaningless, why would they fight so hard to stop you? This is why the Moabite Federation exists. We are here to correct history. To reclaim our nationality. To break free from this system and build a nation of our own, on our own land, with our own currency, governed by our own laws. We are restoring our birthright, our economic freedom, and our legal standing. We are bringing back sovereignty through blockchain, land ownership, and self-governance. You have a choice. You can stay asleep, trapped in the same cycle. Or you can wake up, reclaim your birthright, and start building a future for your family. This is bigger than you. This is bigger than me. This is about our children, our legacy, our sovereignty. The time is now.
Have you ever wondered why Morris dancers dress in blackface? Well, the modern explanation is as follows.
Well, back in the 1400s, which is where it's the earliest recorded events are, during the winter they would put rags on their jackets, maybe put bells on, disguise their faces, normally with soot from the chimney and some grease, and predates any racial connotations.
As entertaining as that explanation is, it is as dishonest as it is convoluted. Let's qualify that by looking up some of the earliest definitions available in this Dictionary of the English Language by Samuel Johnson, dated 1827. It states, for the definition of Morisque, a dance after the manner of the Moors, often written Maurice or Morris, also a dancer of Morris or Moorish dance. In the same dictionary, the definition of Moorish means belonging to the Moors, whilst Moresque means done after the manner of the Moors. And just in case there is any controversy regarding the definition of Moor, the definition for this is a Niger, a Negro, a blackamoor. Shakespeare states, getting up off the Negro's belly, the Moor is with child by you. Also, in as early as 1489, William Caxton states he was so angry he became as black as a Moor. Miranda Kaufman states that Shakespeare described Othello and Aaron of Titus Andronicus as Moors, but references to Othello's sooty bosom and Aaron's coal-black visage make it clear that both were conceived as being dark-skinned. Henry Peacham's drawing of a staging of Titus Andronicus confirms that Aaron was played as a black man. Indeed, the earliest available interpretations of Morris or Moresca dancing leave little room for semantic ambiguity. As seen in this 1480 statue of an original dancing Moor from Bavaria, proving the Moresca tradition was one that was widespread throughout Europe. So should blackface be banned, and should people be offended? Perhaps the greater concern is what seems to be the deliberate omission of the black European contribution toward this culturally significant tradition. Indeed, rather than ignoring or burying this tradition, we should allow it to open up an important and honest discourse about the influential pre-transatlantic presence of black people on the European continent. But bearing that in mind,
history is a lie. How was Beethoven, one of the most revered figures in the history of Western music, described? From Beethoven, the man who freed music. At page 18, we have the description of a young 13-years-old Beethoven. Quote, this is her description of the boy himself. Short, stocky, broad shoulders, short neck, thick head, round nose, blackish brown complexion. End quote. In fact, contemporaries claim that Beethoven resembled a Moor more than his renowned master Haydn. From the life of Ludwig van Beethoven, page 146, quote, this small, thin, dark-complexioned, pockmarked, dark-eyed, bewigged young musician of 22 years, Beethoven, had quietly journeyed to the capital to pursue the study of his art with a small, thin, dark-complexioned, pockmarked, black-eyed, and bewigged veteran composer, his teacher Haydn. In the well-known anecdote related by Carpani of Haydn's introduction to him, Anton Esterhazy, the prince, is made to call the composer a Moor. Beethoven had even more of the Moor in his looks than his master. His front teeth, owing to the singular flatness of the roof of his mouth, protruded and, of course, thrust out his lips. The nose, too, was rather broad and decidedly flattened, while the forehead was remarkably full and round. From Beethoven, his impressions by his contemporaries. Page 26, quote, his coal black hair bristled shaggily about his head. His beard, he had not been shaved for several days, made the lower part of his already brown face still darker. End quote. This is another first-hand account of Beethoven's likeness. There are more, but we would just be beating a dead horse at this point. Beethoven, just like Shakespeare, who we've already covered, and also his teacher Haydn, a revered composer, is yet another victim of the whitewashing of Western figures. He passed away in 1827 in Vienna.
That the Moors were the true American government, and that the Moors ruled America on behalf of the Moorish Sultan of Morocco, because the Moors in America are part of the Moorish Empire. George Washington even admitted that the Moorish government in America had to check in with the Sultan of Morocco. But where have we heard this before? Well, the 1734 Friendship Treaty says all west of Africa is under the Sultan of Morocco. But where have we heard that America was part of an empire with Morocco? Back in 360 BC, Plato said, America was subordinate to Morocco, and were one people and empire. But Plato called America Atlantis and Morocco Atlas. Plato popularized this history, but this ancient history is accredited to ancient Kemet. Remember when Kemet said, or Osiris ruled in the island of Flame but traveled into an eastern desert? Morocco is part of the Sahara Desert and is east of America. Just like Plato said, the Royal Barbaroi, i.e. Moors traveled from America into Morocco and were colonizers of Africa. Plato even made it known that the Moors waged war against Asia and Europe. Barbar is a root word O. I is a suffix ending, so Plato called the Moors by name. We also know this is true because the Atlantic Ocean and America are both named after the Greek name for Morocco, which is Atlas. Point being, George Washington said the same thing Plato said back in 360 BCE. So if you are not a Moorish American, shush, because America belonged to the Moors even in ancient times, and modern, so stop lying on the Moors. America is our land, and if you aren't a Moor, you will not inherit America.
Oh, the United States has caused themselves a problem that they're not going to be able to fix. Anyone freed with the 14th Amendment, those who are enslaved, are American Indians. Why? Because they gave those with African descent freedmen cards, which means that we have tribal affiliation. And now I just proved that the other 3/4 of us are American Indians who were here before the United States. That means every single one of us, including those with African descent, can now mark American Indian on the United States census. So they're taking the wrongful account of us. And then also right now what's currently going on in law is that the census has to change Arab identity from white. And they're changing it to some sort of lettering like MENA, Middle Eastern identity. No, you have to rightfully, geographically, and lawfully change the census categories to take a proper account that no longer promotes white supremacy for oppressors. The oppressors who took our land in North Africa and then enslaved us here, or the oppressors of America who say that they're white. The white count for the United States is absolutely wrong. The last time the census was taken, which was, I believe, last year, it said that the United States population is 75% white. Of course it is. If you put Arabs in the category of white people and you take out all the American Indians and you shift them to the black category. So we are all American Indians because those who were enslaved and freed with the 14th Amendment. We are all American Indians because the United States gave those with African descent freedmen cards. So they now have tribal affiliation. And the rest of us are American Indians mentioned in the law, the baby follows the belly in 1682. We got their ass now.
Your Honor, we proved they shipped us out. Now let's show you what happened when we got there. Exhibit M, Part 3, Disguised in the Caribbean. They didn't just capture indigenous people from the mainland. They erased their names on arrival. Captured Caribs and mainland Indians listed as African Negroes or mulattoes. Slaves labeled as Indians reclassified as Negro once processed in the Caribbean. This was paper genocide on a tropical beach. Your tribe erased, your name changed, your identity stamped out. They didn't want the world to know that indigenous people were being enslaved too. So they said, if you're brown, you're black, and moved on. In the Caribbean, we didn't disappear. We were just rebranded. Make sure to hit that plus button, because these islands ain't just vacation spots, they were crime scenes.
This is not entirely true. The Siberians wandered into this continent 12,000 years ago. Now, the oldest fossilized bones found in the Americas is 23,000 years old. Now, scientists say that the structure of these bones more closely resemble that of an African or an Aboriginal than it does a Native American. Now, pale skin in Asia, where Siberia is, did not show up until 20,000 years ago. And pale skin is only 3,000 years old in Europe. So this means before 20,000 years ago, there were only melanated people on the earth. This also means whoever was in the Americas before the Siberians got here would have been melanated people, and they would not have seen pale skin until 12,000 years ago when Siberians came here.
Did you know that there was a black Viking that came to the Americas before Christopher Columbus in 1007? And when he came to the Americas, he said that he discovered more black people. Let me show you real quick. The Norse Discovery of America, a compilation the extenso of all the sagas, manuscripts, with memorials relating to the finding and settlement of the New World in the 11th century, published by Hans Rasmus B. Anderson in 1906, right? And it's mainly talking about these two people, Thorfinn Karlsefni and Thorhall the Hunter in the year 1007. Thorhall the Hunter is the black Viking that I'm talking about, and it describes on page 1018 to 1019, it says, Thorhall, who was called the Hunter, he had long been with Eric and served him as a huntsman in summer and steward in winter. It says he was a large man and strong, black, and like a giant, silent and foul-mouthed in his speech, and always egged on Eric to the worst. Now did you see in the way that they described this black Viking? Let's see just where did they go to within the Americas. Page 223 it says, now it is to be told that Karlsefni that he went to the southward along the coast and Snorri the Jarl with their people. It says they sailed a long time and until they came to a river which ran out from the land and through a lake out into the sea. It was very shallow and one could not enter the river without high water. It says Karlsefni sailed with his people into the mouth and they called the place Hop. Now, understand, when I say Hop, I'm not talking about this little rabbit movie right here. It says Hop is a lost Viking settlement known in which is mentioned the saga spans down over hundreds of years, right? That says today's archaeologist says the settlement likely resides in northeastern New Brunswick. This is where it's at, Canada, right? So understand, that's still part of the Americas. So, when describing and finding the black people, it says on page 223 to 224, it says that one morning early when they looked around, saw that a great many canoes and poles were swung upon them, and it sounded like the wind in a straw stack, and the swinging was with the sun. It says, then said Karlsefni, what made this donate? It says, Snorri Thorbrandsen answered him, it may be that this is the sign of peace, for let us take a white shield and hold it towards them. And so they did upon this with others roll towards them, and they looked with wonder upon those that they met, and went up unto the lake. It says, these people were black and ill-favored and had coarse hair upon the head. They had large eyes and broad cheeks. They remained there for a time and gazed upon those that they met, and rode afterwards away to the southward round the neck. I ain't got this book proves a couple things. Black people were Vikings, black people discovered the Americas before Christopher Columbus, and black people already was in the Americas and can be indigenous to the Americas. Because of the fact, when he came over, he found what? More black people. Thank you. Peace.
They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds.
Wow. Hey, and them 4 young people sitting around the table discussing their family heritage. Just like me. I'm not gonna throw which one I'm in. Just know one of them said it. That's all I'm gonna leave it at. And it wasn't Cherokee. I know people love to say that one. When I say that I'm American Indian, they'll be like, "Oh, what are you, Cherokee? What are you, Cherokee?" Like that's the only one that we fucking know. No. But it was said. I'm not gonna say it though. But anyway, just crazy. It gives you a whole new mindset when you think of shit like that. Like I said, I know where I stand. That's because I was lucky to come up with a family who never let us forget that shit. Never let us forget it. They make sure that we know. But anyway, I'm your boy Azrael. This has been another episode of Azrael Reacts, and I'll catch you guys next time. Deuces.